after 7 o'clock, so we might as well begin.
There we go. Okay.
Okay, we are live. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening at our semi-annual Homestead Valley Safety and Firewise Committee meeting. We look forward to being able to share with you some of the activities and business that has gone on since our last meeting in May. And we'll get to that agenda in just a moment, but if we go to the next slide, maybe Steve, and I can do the introductions. So I'm Jim Derich, and I'm with the Homestead Valley Safety Committee. And also on with us tonight as part of the panelist group is Chris Can, who is with the Safety Committee and for the last few years has been the coordinator and lead person for the Block Contact program. So Chris will be a part of the presentation. And then also joining us tonight are special guests, Chief Tom Welch from the Mill Valley Fire Department, and our very own Johnny Alper, who is recently retired, but working in retirement with the Southern Marin Fire District and in collaboration with the Mill Valley Fire Department as well. So Tom and Johnny will be the major part of our presentation this evening, focusing on evacuation. And then Steve Quarles is a part of the panelist group. Steve has stepped up to the coordinator for the Homestead Valley Firewise group and also sits on the board of Fire Safe Marin. So Steve will be chiming in at various points during the meeting here, bringing you up to date on Firewise activities in Homestead Valley. Next slide. So what we hope to do is to provide some updates from the Safety and Firewise Committee, our accomplishments during the year and some of the works that are in progress. Chris will provide a brief update on the Block Contact program. And then, as I mentioned, Chief Welch and Johnny will be presenting about evacuation drills, and then Chris and I will be sharing with you some specific plans we have for Homestead Valley related to a couple of evacuation drills that we have that we're in the process of planning. Following that, we'll have whatever time remains between then and 8:30, I guess it would be, to answer any questions that you might have. And next slide. Throughout the meeting, we will be actively monitoring the chat option. So if you have questions that occur to you during the course of anyone's presentation, send it in via chat, and Mike Can will be monitoring that, and we'll be sharing your questions when we get to the Q&A section of the evening. Just to be aware that only the panelists will have open and active mics. The rest of you will be muted. The meeting is being recorded, so just be aware of that, please. Do we in fact have some interactive polling at the end of each segment? No, I didn't think so. Okay. We used this slide in May. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have Q&A at the end of the meeting and hopefully have plenty of time to answer your questions related to various aspects of the presentation, but probably most specifically related to evacuation and commentary from Chief Welch. Next slide, please. So moving on to my piece of it, I'm going to spend a few minutes just sharing with you some of the things that have happened with the Safety Committee. I imagine all of you can remember back to one Saturday, I think it was, at the end of June, Mill Valley Fire and Southern Marin Fire District collaborated on an evacuation drill where we all met down at Marin Horizon School in the yard there. And Chief Welch and other staff from the County Emergency Prep Center and other agencies shared with us various emergency preparedness activities. If I recall correctly, Homestead, we were the sixth of 6 of such drills that the fire districts did. And if I recall correctly, Homestead Valley had the largest turnout. So congratulations to all of you for coming out on a Saturday. One of the things we've been working on since we last talked is preparing the Homestead Valley Community Center as an emergency resource center. And the most significant thing in that regard is that the HVCA, working with Marin County and with financial participation from CSA 14, we've been able to install a backup generator at the community center that is on an automated transfer switch. So then in the event of any kind of a power outage, planned or otherwise, power will be restored at, or generated power will be restored at the community center, and it will be functioning as a resource center for the community. We're still working out the wrinkles of what services will be there and who will be staffing it and so forth. We did put out a call for volunteers to serve as hosts and hostesses in the event of an activation of that resource center, and have 5 people that have volunteered to do that when the need arrives. And then back early summer, midsummer, I can't remember, Jim Small joined me, and we did an inventory of all of the emergency supplies and equipment that HVCA had put in place at the community center going back several years. But there are supplies that need to be updated and certain things need to be replaced, but we're going to try to do that over the course of the next year or so. Another significant piece that really hasn't gotten off the ground yet, but I think could play a major role in an emergency situation, is that we did have an anonymous donation of funding to support purchasing 12 walkie-talkie radio sets. And our intention is to, we want to deploy those to 12 people around the valley and set up a pilot project to test the efficacy of using these two-way walkie-talkies to communicate from the various 59 blocks in Homestead Valley with a command center, wherever that may be, probably at the community center. So we're a little bit behind schedule in actually rolling out that project, but that's still something that we're working on. Also last spring, through a contribution from FireSafe Marin, they donated 20 NOAA weather radios to Homestead Valley. And we have placed those with 20 people throughout the valley. It's again a pilot project for them, and is another means of deploying an emergency alert system throughout the county. I think they have, could I be right, Steve, that they have 1,000 of those radios that they got as a part of this program? I think they may have. Anyway, they deployed a large number of these NOAA weather radios throughout the county in hopes of improving the alert notification system throughout the county. When we were last together in May, we also talked about an LRAD system, long range audible device, which is basically a big speaker mounted on a high pole, like a utility pole, which will be able to make customized announcements to small geographic areas, in our case, Homestead Valley. Funding for that is coming through FireSafe Marin as a part of Measure C that you all voted for 2 years ago in March. And it's being administered through Southern Marin Fire District. Marshall Lau is the fire officer and responsible for coordinating that effort. And they have designated Homestead Valley as a primary site to install one of these. We're just working out some of the wrinkles in how to move forward with the actual installation. Funding is in place. The commitment is there from Southern Marin Fire District, It's just working out some of the installation details. If you haven't seen any announcements about it yet, try to make yourself aware of Zone Haven. Southern Marin Fire has, in their weekly newsletter, has mentioned this a couple of times, and I know that on the Fire Safe Marin website, they reference Zone Haven. And Zone Haven is a online geographic mapping service that the local fire and public safety agencies are collaborating with. And they have divided Marin County up into what seem to be logical evacuation zones. And these zones, again, will have customized messaging that can be sent to these individual zones, informing us of what we are to do, what status we are in terms of evacuation. And I'm sure Chief Welch will be talking more about this later, but and giving us relevant instructions based upon whatever emergency has occurred. So try to make you can log on, you can just go online, zonehaven.com, and do a little bit of exploring there. The important thing to do is to find out what evacuation zone you are in. And you can do that by simply entering your address in a search window on the screen, and it will come back with which zone you're in and show you on a map representation of the zone. Reflective address placard program is still going. The crew is out there installing address placards as quickly as we can after the orders have come in. And we've had a little bit of a lull here the last few months, so we'll probably be hitting you with a couple of reminders or invitations to send in your request for a reflective address placard. We've installed, I think, it must be over 300 now in the district, which is about 30% of our residences in Homestead Valley. And another very significant occurrence and change for Southern Marin is that Southern Marin Fire District has allocated funding to support a coordinator for a neighborhood response group, NRG, neighborhood response group, and have hired a part-time coordinator. Elaine Wilkinson is that person. I think she's online with us tonight. And the intention here is to help various independent, unincorporated areas of Southern Marin County, helping all of us with our emergency planning efforts. And so Elaine is there to serve as a liaison between Southern Marin Fire District and Homestead Valley, Strawberry Point, Tam Valley, Almonte, what's the one over by Ed McGuire School? Anyway, and she's already on board with us and helping us with some resources for the fire drills, evacuation drills that we have scheduled coming up in the spring, which we're going to talk to you about a little bit later. And that's about all I have. So we can go to the next slide, which will bring us to Steve, I believe.
Great, thanks, Jim. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes updating everybody on some Firewise community activities. First of all, thanks to the community, we successfully did what we need to do to remain a Firewise community. There are 900 dwelling units, as Jim alluded to, in our Homestead Valley Firewise community. We have to do certain things to maintain that Firewise status. The first one is have meetings like this, and then we need to spend, as a community, a certain amount on wildfire kind of activities. And so Mark Stahl and I uploaded our information a few weeks ago. They approved it, so we're good to go for another year. Mostly we use community efforts and monies by the land trust that are used to for vegetation management around the valley to meet our goal. We are fortunate in Homestead to have access to two kinds of chipper programs: the Southern Marin Fire chipper program, Measure U funds, and then the MWPA chipper program, the Measure C funds. And we availed ourselves of these. As you can see, Southern Marin Fire, we had 4 scheduled chipper days, and it's estimated that they chipped 5 tons of vegetation. And then during the 2 MWPA chipper days, there were 26 pickups around the community, 66 cubic yards of vegetation. We have a new wildfire mitigation specialist. I think many of us knew Jesse Fagoni. Madison Mead is the new mitigation specialist. I think Jesse got a promotion. So there you go. Congrats there, Jesse, and welcome, Madison. She is on the call this evening. And so if you have questions during the Q&A about chipper day activities or scheduling inspections and the like, Madison will be happy to answer them for you. We also have ability to have debris boxes scheduled. So Maribeth Graham is our coordinator for debris boxes. I encourage you to contact her if you want to schedule one. We had 43 boxes scheduled in 2020 and fairly big drop off in 21, 14 debris boxes. I just want everybody to understand that we still have this available. The debris boxes are typically for things that can't be chipped. But we're happy to schedule them for you, and please contact Maribeth. Just a last note on defensible space. There was a recent home fire on Green Hill that I think many of you know about. And when we think about defensible space, we often think about the fire moving to the home. And these graphics are intended to demonstrate the ways that wildfire can move to a home, and the 3 different kinds of mechanisms that can result in home ignition. So embers, radiant heat, and flame contact. Defensible space also works in reverse. So a good defensible space also helps minimize the chance of fire spreading outward. When it's an individual home, of course, there are things about the home that will influence that. And when one home is burning, a house fire, the fire department will show up for sure. And so they'll also help extinguish the fire of the house burning, but also do everything they can to stop the fire from spreading outward. But this recent fire just made us aware again of a different way to think about defensible space. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and allow Chief Welch to start sharing. And Jim, I think you're going to do some introducing.
Okay. Hello, Chief Welch. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. Chief Tom Welch is with the Mill Valley Fire Department, and he is responsible. Part of his responsibility is for community education and outreach. And he was kind enough to join us tonight, and we invited him to join us tonight, and he was kind enough to accept our offer to help us better understand and become better prepared for evacuations. So welcome, Chief Welch. And then with him, as I mentioned, here is our very own Johnny Alper. Johnny Alper is a resident here and longtime resident here in Homestead Valley, and a retired fireman with Southern Marin Fire District, continuing to work in support of both Southern Marin and Mill Valley Fire, I think, in his retirement. So welcome to both of you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having us, Jim. I just want to confirm that we can see the screen.
Actually, the slide that I'm seeing on the screen is Steve's opening slide from your stack, Steve. There we go.
Okay. Fantastic. Johnny, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, I was just thanking you guys for having us.
Well, yes, thank you for having us. And of course, on behalf of Chief Tubbs, our fire chief, I just want to send along his regards and that he couldn't make it, but he appreciates all the efforts that are going on in Homestead Valley and the efforts of this group here and the folks that put this together. My name is Tom Welch. I'm actually the Deputy Chief of Operations for the Southern Marin Fire Protection District and the Mill Valley Fire Department. We're trying to smash two fire departments together. Some of you may have heard, may have not have heard, but really we want to consolidate Mill Valley and Southern Marin into one department, which we think will add a tremendous amount of value to the community. And so we're actively working on that right now. And we really treat the Southern Marin area as if it was one department, 5 stations. And so that's been great, actually, because we've taken best practices from both agencies and spread them across the entire field. So tonight, I want to briefly cover a host of things here. Johnny's going to help fill in the gaps. I've known Johnny now for 22 years or so. He's got a third more experience as well with the Southern Marin Fire Protection District. And so I think between the two of us, we'll be able to answer any questions you have. And of course, we have Madison on the call as well as Elaine Wilkinson too. So between that slate and Dr. Quarles, I think we can handle anything you might have. These are some of the basic things that we want to cover. Evacuation concepts, that's the lane we want to stay in. Vegetation management and home hardening, Dr. Quarles talked a little bit about that, and we want to brush over that too, because we believe that that is an integral step into a good evacuation, safe evacuation. So home preparedness, another big topic, but we'll glaze over some of this and dive into other areas that we think need additional information. Community refuge areas, some of you may have heard about them. We want to clarify when it's appropriate to go to a community refuge area and when you might not. And then we can share a little bit of information about the drill we had on Blythedale. And then of course, we won't steal Jim's thunder on future drills that are being planned. And then looks like vegetation management and home hardening gets a double hit here on this one. So with that, we'll move off. The goals of the fire department are to really protect the community, protect property, and protect the environment. So lives, property, and the environment. And I like the picture because, you know, it's got a human hand in there. It's holding up the silhouette of a house, and then it's in and amongst the grass. And really, that's what we're about. We prioritize it just this way. First, we want to protect lives, then we want to save property, and then we want to protect the environment. And so moving folks out of the way in a fast moving wildfire is extremely helpful, because our actions change and our behaviors change when people are still at risk. And so to move everybody out of the area and move our firefighters into the area is an important step. So it's important to understand our priorities and what we're here for. The other piece is that we want to build partnerships with the community. That's what we're about. We are from the community, part of the community, and in a disaster, we'll be right there with the community. And so there are responsibilities though. And the fire department lives by the 4 E's: education, which we're doing today, enforcement, which is some of what our inspectors do, engineering controls, kind of like what Dr. Quarles talked about with building construction and vegetation management. Also, we have a whole host of projects on the veg management world where we're trying to build defensible, community defensible space areas on ridge tops and in open areas. And then emergency response is the last one. That's really important. We staff our fire engines 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's kind of the last line of protection when education, enforcement, and engineering controls don't get us all the way. And then our homeowners, boy, we have a responsibility there, residents, to harden our homes, to maintain our vegetation, to have an evacuation plan, which we're going to talk extensively about. But then the final one is to help your neighbors. And that's where Elaine Wilkinson comes in. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward. So, but the first thing that we're always trying to dispel is, do you think Mill Valley could have a fire? Do you think Tam Valley, Homestead Valley could have a fire? We have actually a fairly significant fire history in our area. And we have actually fires within the area all the time. Dr. Corral's talked about a structure fire that we've had. We've had small vegetation fires in and around Homestead, Tam Valley, and Mill Valley, and they're occurring all the time. They just don't rise to the level of where the community notices them. But we do have a significant wildland history. And so this underscores the point that, you know, although the fog might come in many days during the summer and keep us insulated and protected, there are days where we have high fire danger and the risks are real. And so the actions that you are all taking are important. This is just a newspaper that says, you know, actually just above Homestead Valley at Edgewood Reservoir is the #1 spot where people are concerned that a wildland fire could start. And incidentally, after this was published, we did have a wildland fire up at Edgewood Reservoir, but due to good vegetation management and engineering controls, I'll say, we were able to keep that fairly small to less than an acre, and it didn't grow in intensity. Maybe you remember this. In 2019, we had a fire over at Stinson Beach, burned about 50 acres, I believe. And then a couple of years later, we had the Woodward fire over in the GGNRA that burned for actually several weeks. So fires do occur here, and they are possible. This fire could have been a wickedly different event should the wind been not in our favor. And then, of course, you know, Mill Valley has grown up over the years. It's changed from grass oak woodland to all types of different vegetation. And then, of course, it's been infilled with structures, homes, our homes. And so there are risks here where we need to be aware of. And as you can see, the infill here as well is that people are here. And so we want to make sure our goal is to make sure everybody gets out alive. And that's what we want to focus in on. Another picture of that. So protecting your home to evacuate. This is a concept that we very much appreciate. And I'm going to demonstrate a little bit here where if our homes are not burning due to good vegetation management around our homes, and that we're protecting them from the 3 threats that Dr. Corrals had talked about, it's a wickedly different experience to evacuate. It just is. And so good evacuation starts with defensible space, having that plan and making sure that our homes aren't burning, so that when we're driving out our small roads that were built at the turn of the century, haven't been improved much since, built for horse and buggy, are able to handle our capacity for vehicles and stuff. So briefly, how fire moves, direct flame contact, radiant heat and embers, and Dr. Corrals talked about that, but really embers are those boogers that are flying out there in advance of the fire, and they are landing in and around vegetation near your home, catching that vegetation on fire, and then exposing the building to the heat and catching the building on fire. And so I'm not going to dwell on this. I'm going to go pretty quick. I just want to underscore the point that evacuation starts with good management of vegetation. So this little quote here in yellow here, 2 out of 3 homes are ignited by embers, is a pretty startling little piece of data. And so we need to ember proof our homes. And there are a number of ways to do it. And our friends at Fire Safe Marin are all over this. And they're going to help us. They help educate us, but they're also going to help through the MWPA with grants to help harden our homes and do things. So we can actively get prepared. This is just to kind of give you a picture of what I'm talking about. This is an evacuation that's underway, and embers are landing here. This really demonstrates, you know, what an ember shower looks like. But look at the fire along the right side there, and how it is going to be impinge up on these cars. Cars offer a ton of safety, and we'll talk a lot about that, car versus not car. But it just kind of underscores that if we can not have things burning around our evacuation routes, we do better. And so this is what Jesse Fagoni and Madison focus in on, trimming that vegetation back so that we can withstand the fire as we evacuate. This just is another video that kind of underscores the need for vegetation management. This is out in Nevada, actually, but it has some relevance here. And the fact that fire's just running up this hillside here and then threatening and burning homes. The understory of these homes are all open. The decks are all open. And so the direct flame impingement hits the house, and then we go from house to house. And so some simple vegetation management techniques underneath this makes this a different deal, and it makes evacuation a different deal. And if you don't think it can happen here, these are some pictures I took throughout Mill Valley, where vegetation is continuous and has good continuity all the way up to the underbelly of homes that can be threatened. So this is the final picture to underscore my point here on the left. These are evacuation photos taken from Paradise, and you can see multiple lanes in a contraflow type pattern, and we'll talk about that a little later, moving out. But on the left picture, you have folks moving out. It's dark, it's scary, it's smoky. I understand all those things. But on the right photo, you can see where fire is going to be impinging the road. And if wind conditions allow, it'll lay over on the road. That's a much scarier, much more intense event. And so that's what we're trying to prevent. We want to manage the vegetation along our roads, and we want to manage the vegetation around our homes to facilitate an evacuation. This is a picture to.
Let me just add, if you look at those roads in Paradise, they're a bit wider than most of the streets that we have in our neighborhood when it comes to evacuating. So, you know, you and I talked about having a plan B. You know, your car is always your first option, but you know, if the road's blocked and you know, these are 1-lane roads as opposed to 2- and 3-lane roads, having a plan B is pretty paramount as well.
Agreed. So, you know, where do I go to find out more information? Obviously, Fire Safe Marin is our go-to place for information about plantings that you can do around your home that we think are better, building construction features that you can upgrade, strategies that you can take to ensure that our homes don't catch fire and we reduce that risk during an evacuation. So one of the elements that Johnny, myself, and our team here have been really working hard is to kind of reframe the goal of evacuation in our folks' minds. And many think that the goal of evacuation is to get from here to Oakland, or here to San Francisco, or here to Santa Rosa. Although Santa Rosa's burned many times, it probably shouldn't be on your list during a wildland fire, but from here to somewhere. And really what we're doing is we're moving from harm's way out of harm's way. That's what we're doing. And so, but there's a lot of anxiety about getting someplace. And we want to lower that anxiety. We want to move you to safety. That's what our goal is. So if we collect you in a community refuge area in your vehicles, which we'll talk a little bit about when we talk about the evacuation drill we did on Blythedale. But if we do that and we hold you there for a couple of hours, it's just to hold you in a safe spot and then release you as the system allows for that to happen. But really, there are 2 types of evacuations. One where fire is threatening our community. So you saw that picture from Stinson Beach. You know, the fire starts at Stinson, comes up over the ridge, and then all of a sudden it's up on Panoramic and it's going to push down into our community. That is an evacuation where we can see it coming. It could be a fast moving fire, but we can see it coming. And so we're going to provide ample notification, and you're going to take action to move yourself outside the community. This is one that we've seen work well with the Glass Fire. We saw it work well with the Kincaid Fire in 2019, where they moved 80,000 people out of the way. There's a number of other demonstrations where that fire is burning in an area and threatening another area. We're going to evacuate that other area. So that's one where community refuge areas might not be in play, and communication from our incident commanders through the Office of Emergency Services, the sheriff, and our law enforcement partners will stress that. Let's move out of the area. The next one is if there's a fire in your neighborhood And we've all driven around Mill Valley at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday and what the traffic can be, or, 4 o'clock on a Sunday, a good beach day. We all know what the traffic's like. And so it might be impacted in such a way that you cannot move from harm's way to non-harm's way. And so for that reason, we've identified community refuge areas that we have set aside. We put them on a map, and we actually mailed them to you, that you can go and duck out. This was proven during the car fire. This was proven during the campfire. It was proven during a whole host of other fires as places where the community can go hide. And they're big green open spaces. They don't have a whole lot of vegetation or homes around them, but the fire service, Johnny, myself, we've been using them for about 15 years now, but we call them temporary refuge areas. They're areas where we can duck out due to the intensity of fire and then decide when and where to re-engage the fire. But these are just opportunities that, given our infrastructure, and we know how challenging it can be just on a good day, areas where folks can go and hide out if needed. The first step, though, to an evacuation is neighbors helping neighbors. And this is why I love Homestead Valley, out Monte area, is that you're a pretty tight-knit group. You know each other. And it's important that you do know your neighbors. And this is where Elaine Wilkinson comes in. She's going to organize neighborhoods from Mill Valley all the way to Sausalito and everywhere in between, even the western portions of Tiburon and Marin City up onto Throckmorton Ridge, all over. But it's an important element of what we're doing is that neighbors have to have a plan, understand what their plan is, but then when they need to look after each other. And there's a bunch among us that are, they have a little hitch in the giddy up. They don't move as fast as they used to. And so I can't stress enough how important it is that we look after each other, because Johnny backed me up on this one. Firefighters and cops will save a lot of lives over their careers, but none more than neighbors willing to help neighbors. It's just the bottom line.
Yeah, exactly.
So we want to do a lot of organizing, and I feel like we've lost something over the years to where in some neighborhoods, they don't talk to each other. They barely even wave at each other, and hopefully they use all of their fingers. It's challenging. And so we want to reconnect the neighborhood. We want to reconnect people to each other. And COVID, of course, hasn't helped with any of this opportunity either. So it's an important thing when it comes to evacuations. We have to be willing to look after each other. All right, this is a graphic that I made many, many moons ago, and actually I stole it from a professor from the University of Utah, and he broke down the evacuation time phases, and this is where I want to stress to you, what goes on in these in these time phases, but what your role is, part of that partnership. And some of this, I hope, brings some comfort to you. And this is relative to a wildland fire. It's also a structure fire that's going to burn house to house, but for the most part, it's a wildland fire. So the first phase is incident detection. And because we all have cell phones and we all kind of know our area and our neighborhood, and we're all paying attention, Marin is very good at incident detection. We'll spot an issue and we'll call it in, and in record time. And so that's an important piece. But also you should know that we have cameras. We have a couple cameras. One's up on Mount Tam and the other one's on Wolfback Ridge. And then they're actually throughout the entire Northern California, but several of them we can operate. And so when you detect something, we focus in on it right away, and we gather information within the first few seconds. And so we really have shrunk incident detection time down. Then there's a response built. Our 911 dispatchers are very skilled at this. They put together a response, they identify the issue, and then they notify the local fire department and police department to respond. And so multiple fire engines in a wildland fire, you'll have multiple fire engines, you'll get an ambulance, a rescue, a battalion chief, you're going to get air assets, helicopters, fixed wing, You're going to get county fire engines. You're going to get crews, bulldozers. You're going to get more assets than you may need, or you may need them all. And the list of things that you can request just goes up and up and up through from there. So, but they're all led by a battalion chief or a captain acting as a battalion chief. And those are our field commanders, our generals, and they're leading their troops. They're going to identify the issues once they get there, and then they're going to make a decision. Who needs to be notified and who's at risk? And so that decision point's made with law enforcement and fire working together. This is our current situation. This is what we anticipate this situation to look like in 15 minutes and 30 minutes and 45 minutes and an hour and 3 hours and 3 days if it continues for that. And that's how far ahead they're thinking. So that takes a little bit of decision, a little bit of time. And then we got to make some warnings. So once we identify who needs to be warned, then we got to make some notifications. This time we've worked very hard, and Jim mentioned Zone Haven, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. But we worked extremely hard at shortening this time frame up so we can make thousands of calls in just a few seconds. And we have a whole bunch of notification channels that I won't go into today for time, but I'll point you to some websites to get informed. So we can make these notifications super fast. And they start from very technical ways that we notify over the phone and over radio and through your cell phone and eventually through your LRAD tower and everything in between. Here's where the community comes into play. This is the most important thing. Preparation time. Are you prepared to go? Do you have a grab and go bag? Have you thought about your evacuation plan? Does your family know your evacuation plan? Are you the person that's going to spend an hour to figure out what you need prior to going? Preparation time. And when I'm talking preparation time, I'm talking the community preparation time. Is very important. And we need to get that as small as possible. So when we talk about evacuation drills, and we're talking about people getting in their vehicles and getting their grab and go bag and practicing that and getting that down to minutes and seconds, not hours, that's huge, massive. So we can do everything perfect up until this point, but if our community is not prepared to leave, it don't matter how well we did it. It just doesn't matter at all. And so we spend a lot of time and effort and energy on preparing our community. And so that's a really, really important piece that I can't stress enough. The final one, and this is one where a lot of people focus in on network clearing. And when I talk about the network, I'm talking about the road network. How long will it take for us to move vehicles out of the area? We have guesses on how long that will take. But we understand that in an evacuation, there are a million ways to fail. A tree falls across the road, a power line comes down, a vehicle crashes, smoke obscures the road. And anything that you can think of can go wrong, will go wrong in an evacuation. And so we have worked pretty seamlessly with large tech companies like Google, who have mapping softwares and are looking at traffic movements to better understand just how Homestead does it, just how Mill Valley does it, and how they move around every day. And then they've created models. And right now we've done a phase 1 model, which includes Homestead, to see how long an evacuation occurs. And basically what you get is you get a range. On the fast side, if everything goes perfectly, it's this time. And if things don't go perfectly and folks need to adjust and come up with plan B that Johnny had talked about, then that is the case as well. And so you'll get that range of time. But we're studying the network. MWPA is studying the network. We want to understand how it works and what intersections are critical to control, which ones we want to control first, second, third, which ones are the lower priority ones. And I'll talk about Zone Haven. You line all these things up, and that's the evacuation time. And so, but preparation time, very important. We've been on this mantra for a while now, 2 routes. Many people just know one route. It's the route they go to the grocery store every way, but we talk about let's explore and understand 2 ways to get out of your neighborhood. And generally speaking, and Johnny reminded me this today, it's like generally moving from the upper elevations to the valley floor is the best way to do that. And so you wanted to say something about that, Johnny?
Well, yeah, just it's you always want to go down into the lower elevations out of the neighborhood. You know, a lot of us have trails and paths behind our houses, and that's generally not a great idea to go up and into the woods. It might seem like a good, you know, I hear people asking all the time, oh, you know, can we get the combination to that fire gate so we can get out that way? And it's just not a good idea. You always want to go down and out of the neighborhood.
Absolutely. And what we understand is that if we can get you to the Homestead Valley floor and out that way towards the water, that your survivability profile goes up through the roof. And so that's what we want to do. And this is kind of brings me to what we've been doing with evacuation drills. We've been studying and trying to understand ways to create capacity in the valley floor by moving people to specific community refuge areas so that people can move down out of the risk areas up in the hills to the valley floor. More people, more lives saved, less risk for everyone. So 2 routes is important. I can't tell you how many times I've been on a power line down or something down and somebody comes up and says, I need to go through here. And I say, well, there's a power line down, so we can't have you through. PG&E's on the way. I only know one way to my house. And it's like, okay, well, let's talk about this. Let's get the map out. Let's show you some alternatives and let's get you to your house, but not over a power line that's arcing. So 2 ways, and then 2 modes. Your car, as Johnny said early on, is one of the most safest ways to evacuate, the best ways to evacuate. But given our road network, it can be challenging. And so, as I said before, there are a million ways to fail. And so specifically like in Mill Valley, you can get out of danger quicker sometimes by just going down a couple of flights of stairs. We have a steps, lanes, and paths program that brings people down to that valley floor pretty quickly. But you know how quickly a 1-lane road can get boogered up. And so it's just thinking about and having a plan B. I mean, we see pictures all the time of cars burned out. Rarely, if ever, are there bodies in those cars. That's because those people who were driving those cars transitioned. They either got out of that car and got into another car that was running, or they worked their way around whatever was holding them up and got into another vehicle and moved their way out. And so that flexibility, that mindset is important.
Bikes are always a good alternative.
Yep. So it's my hope, because I think we've mailed it twice, that Homestead Valley has received this flyer, and I'll show you a picture of the big flyer. But if we have a fire, and as I said, there's 2 types, one that's kind of threatening from the outside into our community, and then one that's in our neighborhood or in our immediate area and threatening our neighborhood. There are these options. There are community refuge areas. This is something that the fire service has been using for decades, and we've adapted it to the community. Communities all around California are taking this model and really evaluating it. We've identified the Marin Horizons School, the backyard there, as a community refuge area. You can see here the commuter lot over off of Miller as one of those areas as well. And if you're up on the hills above Homestead Valley, that the camp school up there can also help. And we have this mantra that we share with you. It's called Go, Wait, Listen, Go to Safety, Community Refuge Area. If fire's immediately in your neighborhood, wait for the danger to pass and then listen for instructions for the authorities. And so it's very possible that we could get a fire up in the upper areas of Laverne and push everybody down to Marin Horizons, handle the fire, and then invite everybody back home. And so that's another option for us. But if you're up here in your Montford, Laverne area and you're working your way down, but the fire is pushing down on you here, moving over to that community refuge area is an option. It's kind of like in a movie theater. There's a whole bunch of exits, and all those exits represent our options for you to move to safety. And that's all we're identifying here, options. This is what a community refuge would look like. So this is actually Edna McGuire School. So this would be for the Scott Valley. But the most apocalyptic fire that could occur in and around this school, including the school, would not affect you if you were in the second base on this baseball diamond. And so golf courses, that's another one where we have in the upper reaches of Mill Valley. For these neighbors, it's like if you can't get all the way out, or police and fire direct you otherwise, go down and sit on the 6th tee here and wait for further instructions. You're in a green space that's open. It might be a little smoky. There might be some embers that drop on you, but you'll be safe and it's survivable. This is the evacuation flyer that we've sent out. We anticipate sending out again, although we're working with Fire Safe Marin to see if we can alter it so that we're consistent with the county. Provide some good information here about evacuations. And if you want to copy this, you can download it from our website, smfd.org, or you can give us a call and we'll put one in the mail to you. We have a number of them. And then on the flip side of it, it's got all this information. Do you want to be alerted? Most people do. I do. And so here's how you sign up for alerts. It provides definitions to some of the nomenclature, evacuation order or warning, a shelter in place. What's it all mean? And then some check boxes that you can use. But then it provides those community refuge areas that you can go to and hide out. A lot of this information is on 3 websites, and this is the first one that I want to share with you. The Marin Public Emergency Porthole, so it's emergency.marincounty.org. It's a fantastic website. It aggregates a whole bunch of information, and it also links you out to the other websites that I'm going to talk about. Here is where you can find some excellent information on Zonehaven and what we're doing. So this is where we want to send people to get information regarding Zonehaven to understand if their zones, and I'll show you a picture of your zones, information about their zone. So like Jim had talked about, know your zone, and then plug that into your emergency plan so that you can put it to use if needed. But it also has fantastic information about flood and pandemic information, and it really works on this disaster management cycle. Preparedness, that's what we're doing today. Response, we hope we don't have to do, but we're prepared to do. But if there's a disaster, of course, we respond. And then there's a recovery. And then, of course, there's mitigation efforts. How do we build our homes back right? How do we manage the vegetation around our homes that we're going to build back? This is what Zonehaven looks behind the scenes. This is my screenshot that I took of my my portal, and we went through and we named them all. So we're going to focus in here in the Homestead area, and I clicked on some Almonte areas, but this provides really fast, awesome information for us. So if we have a fire in Homestead, it's up here at Laverne, we want to understand who's all affected. And these areas that have lit up here. It tells me that the daytime population is about 1,300. The nighttime population is about 2,100, just for these areas. That there's about 951 vehicles up there during the day and about 1,900 at night when everybody comes home from work. We got about 427 acres of land to cover, and there's about 1,500 structures in this area. And you can see here that Southern Marin Fire Protection District is the fire agency. Marin County Sheriff is the law agency. And then in here, there's evacuation plans for each one of these zones. Which intersections do we control? How do we control them? How many people do we need? What's the equipment that we need to control those intersections? Which ones should we grab first, second, and third? And so there's all kinds of good information because the sheriff, the city of Mill Valley, Sausalito, they have a number of cops on, not very many. And so they're going to request outside resources. Those resources aren't familiar with Homestead. They're not familiar with it as you are. And so these are things that we can hand them and say, here's what we want you to do. Manage this intersection. Here are the resources you need. So it's a really neat tool, and I can do this anywhere in the county and have a good situational awareness of how many people are being affected. But it helps in that response, recovery, mitigate, prepare cycle as well. So this is all good information that we have. So Zone Haven is going to get rolled out. We're building out the backside of it. It's functional. We can use it. We have used it this last summer, and then but it's going to get built out even more. And so good outward facing piece for you. Fantastic information on the inside for us. It's really going to facilitate a smooth evacuation for us. Evacuation drills. I was just going to talk about briefly the Blythedale one, and the premise of that, I kind of alluded to it earlier, was a Google study. But in this case, we took about 200 plus cars. We lined them up on Blythedale, and we wanted to understand if we were alternating the traffic out to 101 and into a community refuge area, about how long would it take for us to drain all of Blythedale? And so, and how many cars could we do that in, or how many cars could we do? And so we set up a very controlled operation, and we found we can do it really quick, 15 minutes in a controlled setting. And that means when we're evacuating Blythedale, we're creating space for folks in the canyons like Homestead and in Mill Valley to move out of harm's way and down into the flats. Like I said, survivability profile goes up when you do that. And so that's a little information on that, but I won't steal any more thunder on that. The other website, so I've shared 2 websites with you so far. FireSafe Marin, fantastic resource. The other one was the county website. Go check that one out. And this is the final one. If you're wondering, gosh, what goes in a go bag? What is an evacuation plan? Ready Marin offers all kinds of good information about that, preparing your family, preparing your business, preparing anything in between. So those are some fantastic resources. The county one will also talk to you all about how do you sign up for alerts and making sure that you get communicated to during an emergency. So I'll turn to my partner, fill in any gaps I might have left. And I think I've close to exceeded my time.
Yeah, I've got nothing. That was pretty good.
It's
Awesome,
comprehensive.
Johnny.
This is kind of a learning experience for me as well. So I appreciate it, but I don't have a whole lot to add.
Okay. So
All
I'll turn
right.
it back over to you, Jim.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chief Welch. Thank you. It's very informative. I think, one of the significant takeaways for me, and I hope for the rest of you on this call, is that our responsibility at the local level is preparation. Be as prepared as we can so that in the event of whatever kind of emergency, wildfire or whatever, the public service agencies are better able to do their jobs because we've done ours in terms of being better prepared. And, one of the things there, and again, Deputy Chief Welch touched on this and alluded to Elaine Wilkinson, who can help us with this, is neighbors connecting with neighbors, neighbors helping neighbors. And that's something that we've been working at here in Homestead Valley for several years now. And Chris Can is going to talk to you about that a little bit more in a few minutes. Before we get to the Q&A, I just wanted to give some additional details related to some planning that we're working on. The Homestead Valley Safety and Firewise Committee is organizing 2 evacuation drills scheduled for this spring. The first one will be for half of the valley on Sunday, March 13th, which is daylight savings time, the time change weekend. So you'll be hearing much more about this. And our second one will be Sunday. We're thinking right now, what we tentatively have set is Sunday, April 10th, which is the last day of the school spring break and the week before Easter. We may need to think about that logistically as to whether or not we want to stick with that date. But these two drills are in the planning process, and we're very optimistic about them being successful. We are adapting this drill protocol from it being successfully implemented by a San Rafael Firewise community last year. And so we are modifying and adapting their successful protocol to apply to the Homestead Valley here. And the intention, what we're hoping to do, and we think that we can be very successful at as well, is to implement all of the elements of an evacuation up to you actually leaving your property. So it's going to mean hoping that when and if you participate in this drill, that you will grab your go bag and all of your important documents and your pets, and you'll have your evacuation plan in mind, and you'll have your 2 routes and 2 means in your mind, and you'll be prepared to hop in your car, and maybe actually hop in your car, drive to the end of your driveway, end of drill. We'll test our preparedness as a community and give you an opportunity to practice some of what maybe you've run through in your mind a number of times. Critical to this whole process is our block contact network. We will be relying upon the block contact network that Chris is going to give further detail on in just a moment to help us disseminate information, provide background information, give you the necessary preparation tools and protocols so that you can be successful in this effort. We'll also be disseminating information through our constant contact e-blast network. So when you get those emails from us with Smokey the Bear there on the masthead, open them and see what information we're trying to share with you. We will have links to all of those online resources that Deputy Chief Welch alluded to. Before I give it to Chris, just a couple of comments. There were some chat questions about whether or not the slide stack would be available. Yes, we can make that available to you. We'll post it. And just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded, and we will make the full meeting recording available probably via YouTube, hopefully within a week of this meeting. And just one other comment, MWPA was mentioned a couple times, just to refresh your memory. MWPA is the Marin Wildlife Prevention Agency. And this is an agency that was funded through Measure C, which we all passed 2 years ago in March. And they're working closely with local emergency preparedness agencies.
Wildfire.
Wildfire. What did I say? Wildlife?
Yes, you did.
Sorry about that. Marin Wildfire Prevention Agency, MWPA. So with that, Chris, she has a few slides and some information that she would like to share with you all.
Okay. I just want to mention that the goal of the block contact program aims at what Deputy Chief Welch advised, that we reconnect neighborhoods in order to organize preparedness. And so to that end, we're developing a contact, hopefully for each of the blocks, and Homestead Valley has been divided into 69 blocks. So we have been recruiting block contacts for each of these blocks. And we presently have 61 of the 69 blocks covered by a block contact. If you want to know who your block contact is, please email me. My email is listed here. We have now an email for a resident in about half of the homes in Homestead Valley. So part of our focus when we're organizing these drills will be to reach out and develop participation in the other half, the half of the neighbors who are not part of the communication network, so that they can receive updates and so that we can support all of the neighbors in preparedness, in practices, and in developing what Deputy Chief Welch has called muscle memory, so that you've practiced enough so that it's muscle memory if you're told to evacuate immediately. Okay, next slide. These are the blocks that we currently have no contact for. So and I'm going to read the addresses, I'll read it just quickly. So if your home falls into one of these neighborhoods, and you or you know someone who might be willing to serve as a block contact, excuse me, please email me. We have no block contact for the homes from Montford 245 to 405, Evergreen 204 to 242, Ethel 530 to 556, Evergreen 18 to 34, Laverne 228 to 260, Evergreen 253 to 265, Melrose 211 and 221, Laverne 223, 227, 229, 235, Wickham 301 to 307, Lillian 4 to 9, Montford 57 to 107, Linden 3 to 140, Montford 23 to 27, Homestead Boulevard 74 to 108, and Morning Sun 4 to 22. So again, we need a contact to represent these neighborhoods. Okay, next slide. The role of the Homestead Block Contact Network as we organize these evacuation drills is a major goal is to leave no resident behind in preparing and practicing for the possibilities of an order to evacuate immediately. So we're really going to be trying hard to get the participation of the entire community. The Block Contact Communication Network plays a key role in the effectiveness of these drills. During the recent Calder fire, a South Lake Tahoe community was ordered to evacuate. A quotation from one of the organizers was, "We didn't panic, we packed. We evacuated in 15 minutes. It was flawless." So again, this community had developed what Chief Tom Welch calls muscle memory. It is possible, and they prove that it is possible for a community to organize effective, valuable evacuation drills. So that's my pitch.
A good pitch. Thank you, Chris, very much. And now we've got about a half hour remaining for Q&A. Mike, if you have any questions that came in during the session, maybe you can start with a couple of those that you have. If not, we can open the mics for everyone, or you can unmute yourself and pose questions to any one of us on the panel. We have Deputy Chief Welch with us. Nice opportunity to get information from him. We have Madison with Vegetation Management Program. So ask your questions.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My question is, I have heard that the Sierras and the foothills are stressed because of low moisture. Is there any evaluation of how the vegetation in Homestead Valley and Mill Valley is stressed in relation to Sierras?
I'll leave that to Chief Welch or Madison.
I'm happy to take a first stab at it. We'll have Madison back clean up here. As you know, I mean, the state is under various degrees of drought, with some of the areas in just severe. This played out during our fire season. When you have drought stressed vegetation, it becomes available to a fire to burn. And Homestead, Southern Marin County is no different. We definitely have had our share of drought stressed vegetation, although I've heard recently, and I read it in the paper, that sudden oak disease has been pushed on pause for our area, I was surprised to hear that, and I wanted to learn more about that. But yes, our vegetation is certainly stressed, and we're seeing it, and the more stressed it becomes, the more available for fire it becomes. And so, I don't know, Madison, do you have anything on that one?
Thanks, Chief. Apologies, I'm not on camera and I'm dialing in here. But definitely to echo what Chief Welch was saying, the sudden oak death has really receded here, around our area. And after that last storm we had, actually really helped out a lot of the vegetation we have that's been stressed out. Seeing it through the summer, it really was struggling. But especially in this last month or so, since the atmospheric river we've seen a lot of really, really tremendous recovery in a lot of the vegetation and the forest we have in the community. So I would say it's a really great sign. We'll see how it develops through the spring. And
Steve?
we see a couple sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to, I kind of saw some of these chat questions here, so we were going to get to those next.
Steve, might I ask you to turn off the screen share so we can get a better gallery view? Thank you.
Jim, David Hill
Yeah.
here.
Hey, hi, David.
Hi. Do you see a role for drones?
Uh-huh. I love playing with drones. And I'm sure I'm sure the fire department uses them. Again, I'll defer to Chief Welch.
Yeah, so we absolutely see a role for drones. We see them not only on the response side of the shop, where we can get a bird's eye view of the incident and have a better understanding of what it's doing and where it's going. That's one aspect. We have to be careful though on a wildland fire, because if we fly drones, then we can't fly helicopters, we can't fly air tankers and other things, because we can't put those pilots at risk during that. And so it's pretty much limited to very small fires where we're not going to have air assets or structure fires and things of that nature. We also can use them for search and rescue. The district has what I will say, a maturing drone program. We have 4 drones. 3 of them will be operational. They'll be deployed by our battalion chiefs and pilots that we're recruiting and training with soon. And then we'll have a 4th drone that will be operated by Fred Hilliard, our fire marshal, and his team to assess vegetation. And so they have various capabilities to map vegetation. The way I see it is that there's a lot of money the governor's putting out right now for vegetation management, and drones will be good at mapping the vegetation before and then the vegetation after. And then subsequently, when you put an investment like that in vegetation management, let's say it's a fuel break, it's like a facility. It requires maintenance. And so drones will help identify when that maintenance interval can be. So lots of use for drones. We're just now getting our feet wet with it, but we have access to some outstanding drones. The sheriff has a fantastic drone that has good cameras that could see with forward leaning infrared and other technologies and things like that. So that's a long way of saying, yep, there's a need for drones.
What,
I might have thought.
Jim,
Go
can I
ahead.
follow up?
Yes.
2 questions. What triggers the launch of a drone, and who decides when to launch a drone?
So for us, the triggering of a launch of a drone would be, in the prevention world, it would be a request from a homeowner. Can you map the fuels around my home or on my property? So that would be how that would go. On an incident, it will be at the discretion of the battalion chief of when we're going to fly it, what the mission of it is for that particular flight. And of course, there's sensitive information that's recorded. And so we have policies in place that take that sensitive information and vault it so that it can't get out, and or it's used for training, or it's destroyed after its useful life. So those are the 2 areas that would trigger the use of a drone.
A related, just to that, related issue is that the fire departments have a network of fire watch cameras all throughout the county, Southern Marin County for sure. And those are accessible to us, the public, through a website, I think, that is available that you can get to through Fire Safe Marin. So if you want to look at some of those fire watch cameras, you can get a mountaintop view of the surrounding areas. Somebody had
a couple of questions for Madison.
Okay.
Will the vegetation management specialist help us determine what an appropriate defensible space for our home is?
Thanks for your question. So I'm more than happy to come out and assess your home or do a defensible space inspection. We also have defensible space inspectors, Johnny, who's on the call included, to be able to respond out here to any home assessments or annual inspections that we need to do. So yeah, any of us are able to respond to this for you and help you, kind of give you the right direction or any kind of tips that we can give you to give you the best chance for your defensible space.
And the request would go to Southern Marin Fire District?
Yes, so the request can go straight to the Southern Marin Fire District. You can feel free also to send me a direct email. I'll put that in the chat here, so you guys can just send an email request and we can get those coordinated and respond as soon as we can.
Great, thank you.
I also have a question, Paula John Turco.
Hi.
We have all been told that we are to stop irrigating between December 1 and May 15. It seems to me that it's a difficult thing to assess, because on the one hand, we would like to save water. On the other hand, it seems to me that we are drying up more and more of our vegetation and making it more vulnerable to fire. I'd like to know your position on that.
Good question.
Well, that's an interesting tension, isn't it? Yeah. So, we want to follow what our leadership is providing as it relates to water usage so that we can ensure that we have water. I actually use a lot of water to fight fires every day. And so I want to make sure that we have enough in our storage to be able to do that. And so, that's one side of the shop where we can serve to ensure that we can adequately water ourselves, but also have enough for fire protection. So that's one side. And then the other side, of course, is that moisture and maintenance piece that you're talking about. And, I think our friends at Fire Safe Marin, Madison, would have more information on that as far as strategies that you can take to ensure that we can achieve both, that you can have a beautiful and safe yard that's moist, and also we have enough water for firefighting and use, domestic use. Madison, do you have anything else on that?
No, Chief, I think you did great. When it comes to defensible space, I definitely agree with the sentiment of wanting to save water, but also the vegetation drying up here, so it's a really fine balance. And, that's one of the biggest reasons we like to tell residents that we're happy to come out to your home individually and kind of see what the best option is for you. Sometimes it kind of comes down to meeting in the middle. Sometimes it comes down to, assessing your property for just better equipped vegetation. We see a lot of residents kind of lean towards more water retaining vegetation, things like succulents, and although that's not necessarily what we're used to seeing, for people who are really hard pressed on wanting to have vegetation, we do have options, and we have less combustible vegetation that you can go towards, with your own landscaping. And we can always find something that'll, I think at the end of the day, we can meet in the middle and find common ground for everyone.
Mike,
Got
are there
a question.
Yeah.
Got a question, probably for Deputy Chief Walsh here. Does Marin Horizon have its own evacuation plan? For instance, using buses to get students out of Homestead? And if no time to evacuate, is the plan from MHS to students, teachers, and community members to take refuge there?
Yeah, so I'm ignorant to the specific details of their plan. I do know there's a requirement for educational facilities to have a plan. We do work with many of the community schools on informing their plan. I'm not specific. I don't specifically understand Marin Horizons, but sheltering in place is always an option for kids, and it often is the first option that takes. A few years ago, we had a structured fire and a gas leak that was right in the immediate area. And we asked the school to shelter in place. They were able to do that quite quickly and take protective action. But as far as do they actually have a bus plan, I can't say, but I could certainly find out. It's a noble piece of information.
Let me tag on to that. I was at a meeting last week with Marin Horizon School, and brought up the issue of the need for Marin Horizons emergency planning group to coordinate with Homestead Valley Safety Committee. And there's general consensus that we'll be working on that through the winter and into the spring. So our safety committee and Firewise committee will become better informed as to what the school's plans are and how we can support one another in the event of various kinds of emergencies. I think it's interesting to keep in mind that there's no telling when an emergency may occur, and that school site is without teachers and students for more of the day than it is than teachers and students are there. And so it's certainly conceivable that the community, it would be helpful to the community to have access to that full facility in non-school hours. During school hours, of course, their primary responsibility is to the safety and security of their staff and students, and they have to secure that and ensure that. So we'll keep you posted on that as we grow closer together in our planning processes. Any other questions out there? Well, we've got some experts online here. Now's your chance. Go for it. Nothing more on your end, Mike?
Oh, we've answered them all.
Okay. I guess we had all
Yeah,
did such a
Jim,
good job. Okay,
Jim,
okay.
I've got one.
Ron, go for it.
I want to thank Chief Welch for his presentation. I think it was great, concise and up to date. And I have one question too. When is the LRAD system going to actually become operational, approximately?
Good question.
Fantastic. Good question. So we're in the nitty-gritty details of working through that with the county. I believe we have a location that is workable for all the parties, for Jim and his team and the school. And now we just need to work our way through the county. Our goal is to have it operational and online before fire season coming up. So we have the funding, we have the equipment. We're just now working through the nitty-gritty details of it.
And have you also worked with the various telephone companies, whatever they may be called, for cell phone assurance, so that they just don't go down like they have in previous years?
Yeah, that's a great statement there. So our Senator McGuire, he authored a bill with others to build in resiliency with the cell phones. And so there was a time when the PG&E would shut the power off and we would lose over 50% of the cell connectivity for our area. And that has steadily improved over time. And so resiliency is being built in with additional batteries, gen sets to be able to operate these systems. And so we're getting better and better every day, stronger and more resilient. I can't say that we're all the way there, but we're on our way.
Thank you.
Follow-up question to that. Do you happen to know if that legislation actually passed and was signed by the governor?
I assume so. Are you going to get me on a technicality here?
No, I knew that it had been floated and it had gone through the legislature, but I didn't know if it had actually been passed, and it very well may have been. I just don't know. Yeah.
Well,
sorry.
What I hear from our OES folks is that improvements are being made. Plus, our fire marshal and his team, every time you put a tower on a building, they can see what's the battery life, how is it built, and so codes and regulation are catching up to ensure that, because we put a lot of eggs in that communication basket with cellular technology. The neat thing though about LRAD is that we're not using cellular technology. That's an option for us, but we're using satellite downlink. And also we have a redundant power source on the pole itself in a battery set. So we're trying to build in as much redundancy as possible. And so satellite downlink with battery backup has been the best way forward. LRAD's not perfect though. It's just one more tool that we have.
Yeah. Before it sounds like we're coming toward the end, and I would just like to encourage everyone on this call that if you haven't already, be sure to sign up for the various alert systems that are available to you. That's a critical factor in you becoming prepared, where you'll know when an emergency is evolving. And So go to one of the websites, Southern Marin's websites, Fire Safe Marin website. They all have links to sign you up for Alert Marin and other alert systems. One of the very first things we should all do.
Jim?
Go ahead.
I would also like to encourage all of you to find out who your block contact is and to be sure that your block contact has your email so that you're part of the communication network. And also to encourage you to take part in these drills. It helps you and it helps the community to be involved and to be able to evacuate quickly.
Yeah.
So
Great.
hopefully you'll all participate.
Last chance. Going once, twice, 3 times. It's over, folks. You had your chance. Thank you all. We appreciate you turning out this evening. Thank you, Chief Welch. Thank you, Elaine, for coming and visiting with us. Thank you, Madison, for tuning in and answering those questions. We really appreciate the work that you're doing to support our community preparedness. It's great. That's it.
Thank you all.
Steve, shut it down. We are done.
Thank you. Thanks,
All
Firewise
right.
team.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good.